Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen Reddit stories. In this video, an entitled Karen banned me from her parking lot, called the police on me and tried to get my car towed, all the while standing on my personal property. She thought I was just some guy abusing resident parking, but the truth is I own every single spot she was patrolling. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, Karen bans me from parking lot, calls 911, unaware I own the entire parking lot. So I, 35 male, live in a mixed-use neighborhood. It might not be what a lot of people are used to, but honestly, having a mixture of zoning, I think, creates an interesting atmosphere. I own a small strip in the neighborhood and live like a block away from it. It has a tiny hair salon, a place to get coffee, and a UPS store. In the back is a private parking lot. It is meant for the employees and people going into the stores. I have signs saying that and threatening towing, which I never had to do before. It is for the businesses, not overflow parking, but again, most people can read the signs and don't try and pull anything. After hours though, I just don't care who uses it. Nobody is getting in the way by parking there. I understand that parking in my neighborhood kind of sucks. I even leave one of my cars at the lot due to street parking being near impossible and my garage being used mainly for storage. So if after hours somebody wants to park to walk to a different store, just leave their car there at their own risk for a couple hours to visit a friend nearby, I don't stop them. I have signs too that make it clear I'm not responsible for anything that happens if they park in my parking lot. One evening, I pulled into the lot like I always did. It was after hours, the businesses were closed and there were maybe two other cars scattered around. I parked in my usual corner spot and was grabbing a couple of things out of the back seat when I heard someone approaching with the kind of heavy footsteps that, you know, are intentional. Also making that like annoyed clicking sound with their tongue, going like eh. After, I didn't need to turn around before I knew I wasn't going to like this. This Karen was in her mid-40s and looked like the kind of person who thought they were more important than they actually were. Like the type you give a clipboard and they think they hold a ton of power. She didn't say hello or ask any questions. Instead, she immediately spoke in an angry tone at me. She told me I wasn't allowed to park here in the lot, and before I could even open my mouth to argue, she went into this entire rant about how this lot was for residents and guests only. That I was taking advantage and she has personally seen me parking here many times. She was basically talking to me like I was a 4-year-old kid who had stolen a cookie. Well, suffice to say, I'm not a kid and she's not my mom, thank God, and I told her calmly that the lot was not a residential lot, but actually a business parking lot, but she didn't want to hear it. She insisted she lived nearby, that the businesses didn't need this many spots anyway, and that she had already taken notes on how many times she had seen my car here, telling me that the businesses were only half the lot and the rest was supposedly residential. Then she started to ask me personal questions with her phone camera pointed at me, my name, where exactly I lived and so on, and at least 3 times said that she was gonna report me if she saw my car in the community lot again. She genuinely believed she had some kind of authority over this place. She even pointed at the printed signs, and yes, my signs that I paid to have installed, and told me she could get me towed if I parked there again. I could have said I owned the lot, but that would have involved her letting me get a single word into the conversation. It was not a conversation actually, it was like a speech she was giving. Her final warning was that she'd call the police next time to have me handled, and then she stormed off like she had just performed a public service or something. I stood there for a second wondering what universe she lived in, because it definitely was not mine. A few days passed and honestly I didn't think about her at all. People like her usually burn themselves out after one dramatic outburst. I figured she had just needed to feel important for 5 minutes and would move on. I was wrong though. The next incident happened on a Saturday afternoon. The businesses were open, the lot was busy, and I pulled in to drop off paperwork at the UPS store. I had barely stepped out of my car when I saw her again. Same stiff posture, same expression, like she had smelled something terrible. She stood in the middle of the lot with pen and paper, actually writing down people's plate numbers. It was frickin' creepy, like that is personal kind of information. She locked eyes with me and immediately started marching over like she'd been waiting for me to show up. She didn't ask questions, she didn't even say anything, she just pulled out her phone and loudly called the police saying that somebody was illegally trespassing. You know, compared to all those totally legal trespassers. Well, she also told them that I was stealing parking from residents. I tried explaining again that the lot was not theirs, was not the neighborhood's, and wasn't under any sort of residential management. But she didn't care. She made a big scene about how she knew the rules and how I was not gonna get away with it. She even told the police before on the phone my plate and car info, so I knew I couldn't just leave at this point. People were staring too. A couple of employees from my own business were standing in the doorway watching the whole thing unfold. Some employees knew who I was and didn't know why somebody would be calling the police on me. Most people, when they saw it was fairly boring, went on with their day. At that point I realized she fully believed that she actually had authority here, not just bluffing or anything, but she really believed in her mind that she was right. That the parking lot belonged to the neighborhood and it was her job to protect it. I hope it's nice on the planet she lives on, though it sounds stressful to me personally, so I just stood there and waited for the police to arrive. If she wanted to escalate things, I was ready to take it that far too. Maybe she would finally be forced to listen to something I had to say once they arrived. The officers showed up faster than I expected. 2 cruisers pulled in, lights on, but no sirens. Karen seemed to break the law of physics by standing up even straighter and looking like she had just won the lottery or something. She practically rushed them before they even finished getting out of the car, waving her arms and launching into a dramatic explanation of how I was a repeat offender and refusing to comply with parking regulations. She pointed at me like she was identifying a fugitive or something. With zero context, I actually got her to shut up and explain what she was talking about. She told them everything about how I kept parking here at the community lot and leaving my car overnight, and that it was for everybody and I was being greedy. I felt so bad for these officers. They looked just confused but remained professional. They asked for my information, very calm and polite, just doing their job. I handed everything over without a fuss and they asked if I had any business being there. This is when I was finally able to speak without Karen being able to interrupt me. Actually, I have more than one reason to be here. Well, first of all, I just came to use the UPS store. I got something to mail. Karen, don't believe him, he's always here. That's also true. I'm always here, partially because I own the strip of stores and the parking lot itself. I don't have the originals on me, but I can get you photos of the deeds and have a couple of the business owners tell you exactly who I am, since they make their rent checks out to me personally. I didn't need to say much after that. The officers didn't want to deal with verifying everything, but they took a look at a couple of photos I had and said they were good enough. He seemed annoyed, but not at me, more at Karen for getting the police involved in what is very clearly not an emergency. Meanwhile, Karen kept insisting she knew the owner personally and that the lot was residential overflow only, even though she clearly didn't know my name, my face, or anything about the business attached to the lot. And clearly couldn't read the signs that I just calmly pointed out to the police. Nowhere did it say neighborhood overflow. When the officers explained the truth to her, politely but very firmly, the color drained out of her face. She went from confident to confused to offended in the span of about 30 seconds. She tried to backpedal, saying she was only trying to maintain order, but at that point the officers were already warning her that filing false reports was a serious problem. They told her to leave the lot immediately, and for the first time in the entire ordeal, she actually listened. Once the officers left, the lot went back to normal. Employees returned inside, customers drifted away, and I parked my car properly again. But Karen lingered in the neighborhood. I kept catching glimpses of her pacing on the sidewalk, glaring at the businesses as if they had personally betrayed her. She didn't try approaching me again, but that was only because the officers had made it very clear she needed to stay off the property unless she had legitimate business there. I thought that was the end of it, but apparently Karen was not done embarrassing herself. The next morning, one of the salon employees texted me a video recorded from the inside the front window. Karen was back marching into the lot, taking pictures of every car like she was conducting a full city inspection. She walked around checking license plates, jotting down notes, and even filming the pavement like she expected to find evidence of a crime hidden in the asphalt. Every few minutes she muttered angrily to herself and shook her head. She was now officially trespassing. I took the petty route and simply forwarded the video to the same officer from the day before with a short message explaining that she had returned and was once again interfering with businesses. With the officers present, I formally trespassed her from the property, telling her she was no longer welcome and needed to leave immediately. The officers witnessed this and informed her that now that she had been officially trespassed by the original property owner, if she returned for any reason, she would be arrested. She tried to argue, of course, waving her arms in disbelief, but the officers were not interested in her theatrics anymore. They made it very clear that this was now a legal matter and she needed to stay away. Word spread fast. The salon, the coffee shop, even the UPS store had all dealt with her at various points without ever knowing who she was or where she came from. Now they finally understood that she had no authority whatsoever, just a massive sense of entitlement and way too much free time. Everyone now knew that she was the problem, not me. She had lost her imaginary power trip, lost the ability to harass customers, and lost even the smallest sliver of respect she thought she had. And best of all, she was banned from the lot she tried so hard to control. After Karen was officially banned from the lot, the neighborhood settled back into its normal rhythm. The businesses operated without the constant stress of a self-appointed parking police, and I could finally use my property without fearing another dramatic confrontation. The entire ordeal had been ridiculous, but there was a certain satisfaction in knowing that it had all played out exactly as it should. In the end, she got herself banned. I got to keep my property, my peace of mind, and my reputation intact. It was a small victory, but sometimes small victories are the sweetest, especially when they involve watching someone unravel all by themselves. And the next one is an I do work here lady story, which is titled "My face is on the building, but somehow I'm not the owner." So I got an IT services business now, serving corporate clients, but several years ago I also had a small chain of computer repair stores and took customer walk-ins. To be clear, I was a pretty active owner and would work the front counter regularly because I like to interact with customers when I can. I like to try to stay close to what the frontline is struggling with, since they understand the business way better than me in some key regards. I also think pretty highly of myself, so I used to plaster my face on all of my advertising, which resulted in my ending up as a sort of walking billboard for my business around town. So I'm working the counter at one of my shops, and this fellow I'd never seen before walks in and brings his computer to the counter and tells me that his computer is not working and that I need to fix it. And by the way guys, if you enjoy these I do work here lady stories, which are kind of rare, please don't forget to like the video because that would help me tremendously. Also let me know where you are watching from today. Anyway, he was a second language learner, and so you cannot always assume someone is trying to be rude if English is not their first language. Sometimes it just sounds that way, so patience is important, and so is not judging someone. I thank him for coming in and explained to him the diagnostic fees we charged, and that the diagnostic fee went towards the repair, all the standard stuff, and he immediately flies into a rage. He tells me that he had already paid the fee and the computer was still not fixed. "Oh no," I said, "when did you bring it in?" He said he couldn't remember, but that it wasn't that long ago, so I looked it up in the computer system, and sure enough, there is his customer record complete with the serial number of his system. It had been a full year since he had that computer in. When I explained this to him and that it had been too long by anyone's standards, most new consumer computers only have a 1-year factory warranty, and this was not a new computer, he flies into another tirade about what a ripoff we are, and how I need to fix this computer because it never worked right after he got it back. I explained it had just been too long, and that sets him off screaming and threatening me. Fortunately, there was a counter between us, so I tell him to get out of my store. I used profanity. It was not my finest hour, but profanity is a strong suit of mine. He won't leave though, and says he's not leaving until I fix his computer for free, and says he will call the cops if he has to. I pick up the phone and dial police for him, explaining to the dispatcher I have someone in my shop who threatened me and refuses to leave. So the police show up, and by this time the guy has calmed down a bit and even seems thankful the police had arrived. After a short interview as to my job role and the situation, the responding officer says, "Sorry, the owner wants you to leave, so you're going to have to leave." This sets the guy off even more, and he starts screaming, "He's not the owner. I know the owner. The owner would never treat me this way. He's not the owner." So the policeman says, "This is the owner." I happen to know that he's the owner. The guy continues to argue with the officer, but the officer remains calm and says, "Okay, how about we talk about this outside?" To my surprise, the guy grabs his computer and goes outside with the officer, still ranting on and on about how I had no authority and the officer had no right to throw him out and he wants to speak to the owner. I could still see and hear the two of them outside the retail glass doors as the police officer calmly points to the 9-foot-tall retail window on the front of the store with my photo taking up 2/3 of the space and my name and title in about 9-inch bold letters under my giant ugly face. So the man goes silent, packs his computer in his car, hops in and drives away. I never saw him again. I was really thankful one of my clerks didn't have to deal with that guy, but when I messaged them all the story, they all wished they had been there. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I swear that the people who suffer the most from HOAs are not the people in them, but the ones living right next to them. The number of other people I've heard of having issues, though to a lesser degree, are outrageous. I live next to an HOA, but it's clear by just looking at my property that I'm not part of it. Each home they have is about 1/4 of an acre of land, while my property is just under 2 acres. Some might feel weird being the odd one out, but I enjoy the fact that I don't have a group of people bossing me around or telling me what I can and cannot do. I know this HOA is one of the strict a-hole ones too, which makes me even happier that I'm lucky enough to be just outside of their reach. I went on a summer holiday to Italy with my entire extended family and we were gone for 2 weeks. I met cousins I never had before that lived over there and had a great time. I didn't expect to return home and see that there was anything different about my property. To me, the worst thing that can happen when you go on vacation is that you get robbed. Well, almost my entire backyard had been converted into a parking lot with my back fence nowhere to be seen. Honestly, I was not using the land for much, but I enjoyed all the trees and nature that it provided. I've always liked that lyric in the song, "They paved paradise and put up a parking lot, but I did not think it was going to happen in my own backyard." Dozens of cars were parked, and when I looked I could see signs flat out saying things like HOA residential parking only. They did not even hide that they did it. I was furious with them and went right over to demand that they tell me what the hell they were thinking when they came up with this ridiculous plan. I could not play nice or pretend to be polite after coming home to see what happened. HOA, we needed more room for the cars to park. Not everybody has a driveway and street parking can be very hard and dangerous. That land was the perfect spot for it. Me, it's not your land to use. I didn't agree to rent it out to you. HOA, since you brought up the topic of money, we have a bill here for you. $5,000 assessment fee for the improvements we made to the land. Plus, you need to start paying your HOA dues, as we cannot ignore it any longer. Me, if you think I'm giving you a single penny, then you are out of your mind. I am not in your HOA and I would die before I was forced into it. As for the bill, I don't have to tell you where you can shove it, right? I left even angrier that they were trying to make me pay for them destroying my land. I got more fines in the mail claiming that I was non-compliant, and including the previous bill they tried to give me, it was over 10 grand. They even threatened to take me to court and sell my property in order to get their money. I got a lawyer of my own and was able to go to town hall and request to see the HOA borders. It proved that I was not within their HOA boundaries, and even if for some reason joining them was my dream, I would not even be able to. My lawyer then sent a cease and desist letter with the proof that I was not part of the HOA. They ignored it and more fines kept coming to my doorstep. I also could not stop the many cars from parking on my property. Instead of starting 30 fights every single day, I just set up a camera and tried putting up private property signs that the HOA took down though. 24 hours a day cars were coming and going and I couldn't do a thing about it. I finally hit the threshold point of them ignoring my lawyer letters long enough that I was able to sue the HOA for trespassing, property damage, loss of land use, and mental anguish. The last one being the stress of random people being on my property all day and even at night when I was sleeping. It was unnerving to say the least. We were suing them for $250,000 in damages. To remove and dig up all the concrete, replace the grass and trees that were destroyed, and of course for punitive damages too. I had all the evidence I needed and both of our sides knew that the HOA did not have any legal excuse for what they had done. They just did it and hoped that I somehow wouldn't do anything about it. They tried to counteroffer giving me $5,000 only, but the lot would stay. They were deluded if they thought that offer was in any way, shape or form fair. It was an insult to be offered so little, and I said no way and took things to be in front of a judge. The judge was pissed at the HOA and didn't want to even let them get a word in to say one of their stupid lies or even more excuses. In the end, I was awarded the full amount despite their moaning, plus they had to pay for my legal fees. They would also be in charge of removing the parking lot and restoring the land back to its former state. A lot of HOAs now do have insurance, so I was worried they were not actually going to feel any negative repercussions for what they had done to me, but their insurance was refusing to pay since what they had done was illegal. They were stuck paying me out of pocket and being broke, with the rest of the HOA community not being happy about it. They knew less money meant the HOA overstepping its boundaries more to give them fines for every little thing. None of them went to jail for this kind of thing, but the fact that they were broke and the community hated them was a decent punishment. Without the money or the confidence of the people, the entire board was forced to step down, with new people coming up to take control. Better people that actually cared and were not going to overstep boundaries like their predecessors. The only question I'm really left with is wondering how they would think this would not end poorly for them. I cannot believe they were so dumb to think that I was going to be okay with all of this and just hand over the money they asked for on top of it all. My only guess is that a lot of people don't know their rights and get taken advantage of because of it. HOAs might think that they have these crazy rights that let them do anything they want, and a judge will just side with them over a homeowner. My guess is my HOA assumed that one, because of the amount they tried to talk and got interrupted by the judge. The judge flat out told them that when it comes to a property line violation, the law is always gonna side with the homeowner whose land has been trespassed on by default. Maybe the heavy amount they had to pay will teach somebody that being an HOA doesn't mean that you can do anything you want. Edit. Some people were asking where exactly this happened. In order to not give away too much private information, I will just say that this did not happen in the US. However, in my country we have a lot of rich communities that are governed by HOAs, and many of them are just as entitled as the one in the United States. And yeah, Ripestars, I gotta say, this is something that I noticed recently. Actually, a lot of countries have HOAs, however, most of the time they are not actually called HOAs, but it seems like no matter where you are, there's certainly a group of people somewhere that like to cosplay as little dictators and take fines from you, even if they don't have any right to. I guess it's just a pastime for some people. Anyway, the next one is a pro-revenge story. When our first child was born, my ex forced me to quit my job. When our second child was 2, I found out about his affair. By then he was extremely verbally, emotionally and sometimes even physically abusive. When he abused our firstborn, I put him out. That was in 2012. I could not afford daycare to work and had no family support. He refused to give me any money to take care of the kids, saying, "The courts have not ordered me to give you a dime." He lied to the bank and had my accounts frozen, and even assaulted me when I filed for default in the divorce. The judge finally ordered him to pay child and spousal support 6 months after I kicked him out. It was $2,562, I guess, a month. He refused to pay it until the garnishment kicked in, and by then he was $6,000 behind in support. I used that to get permission to move away. I remarried a year after the divorce. I checked the court documents and there was a little box that said spousal support stopped upon remarriage if that box was checked. It was not checked though, so I figured I was good. Instead of filing for his retirement, I just took that year of spousal support, $12,000, and left it alone. Spousal support was only ordered for 2 years. In 2017, he filed for sole custody of the kids out of nowhere. That was when he found out I had remarried and he had paid spousal support to me during the first year of my marriage. I told him I took that money instead of filing for my share of his retirement. I said if he let me keep that $12K, I would not file to split his 401k. He demanded that I repay the spousal support. The judge ordered me to repay it but increased child support and deducted the repayment from that. It ended up that I got an extra $20 a month and he repaid himself. He dropped his bid for custody in exchange for 2 extra weeks in summer. I pursued the retirement account split, he refused to cooperate and dragged it out for 4 years. It was so bad they sanctioned him and he had to pay me $600 a month for a year in addition to child support. They also charged him with contempt. In January 2021, he proposed to his girlfriend. In May of 2021, I finally got the disbursement from his 401k. I won't say how much it was, but it was about 4 times the amount of spousal support overpayment. I had no idea it would be that much. I had thought it would be around 12,000, which is why I thought keeping that year of spousal and not filing for his retirement account was a fair trade. Had he not tried to take the kids from me, I never would have filed to split the account. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. By the way, his fiancée emailed me recently and told me it's my fault he won't marry her because I cleaned out his retirement account. She said I shouldn't have stolen his money. I told her that I gave him the option to let me keep that year of spousal support or take it back and I could file for his retirement. He chose to have me file for his retirement. I told her that if he really wanted to marry her and protect his assets, they could get a prenup so he wouldn't have to worry about it. She said she shouldn't have to sign a prenup because I robbed him. I never asked to be financially dependent on him. He clearly indicated that he wanted a court order to take care of his kids, so then I got him one. I tried to be fair and take the lesser amount by taking the spousal support and not filing for his retirement. He would not let me though. The next one is a petty revenge story, which is titled "Seller had my cousin and I drive an hour for a sale, cancel the sale. I made the seller drive 2 hours for nothing and the cousin ends up winning big time." So about 5 years ago, my cousin, who was stationed in the airbase, decides to live with us. He loves to shop around and according to him, things are cheaper down in here. So one day he comes to me and asks if I want to drive down an hour to pick up a bundle of 12 2 copper wire. Cannot remember the quantity, but it was more than 15. At the time we were working on my house doing small projects and we saw how the price of things were creeping up, so he wanted to buy before they got insanely expensive, which they did. So we drive down about an hour and the seller texts my cousin and tells him that the deal is off and someone else is paying top dollar. My cousin is pissed off at this point and we drive back. Asks me to stop at a convenience store to buy a couple of beers. He was angry and then he was bummed out. So I told him, what if I make him drive up an hour to make him waste his time? Not long ago, I bought something off OfferUp as well, and the Home Depot we met at came to my mind. So I text a guy offered close to full price for them. He got excited, he replied seconds after every text. He texts me saying that he's at the Home Depot, and I block him. He messages my cousin if he's still interested. He says yes, but for slightly less money, drives wire to my house, unloads it for my cousin, and leaves. Cousin was not sad anymore. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. That is how you get petty revenge, and I will see you again tomorrow.